Welcome to the Collective Genius Podcast, the show for real estate investors who are looking to scale.
All right, welcome back into the Collective Genius Podcast, the podcast and the community for high-level real estate investors that want to continue to grow and scale their business. My name is Leon Barnes, and I am your host today, and hopefully every week, unless they cancel me from this role. Hopefully I get to continue this, and I'm guessing that today I'll get to keep my job because I have a great guest for you. Longtime Collective Genius member, and now the highest level Collective Genius CEO member, Mr. Damon Lines. Welcome in, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing good. Pleasure to be here, Leon.
That's too muted for your type of personality. Like, I need more from you out of the gates.
Are we thinking what I'm thinking?
No. Keep the shirt on. Hopefully the people that are watching this on YouTube can fast forward through that part.
Yeah. I got to warm up to them. They got to, if I come in hot, everybody just won't like me. They got to learn to not like me.
Yeah. So I will say you are an acquired taste, and I'm so glad I've known you now for almost 7 years. And, for those that don't know you, Damon, let's start with where you operate out of, what it is that you do on the real estate investing side. And let's just start with those things.
Okay. Yeah. So name's Damon Lines. I guess kind of going far back, born and raised out in Arizona. But then in 2010, my partner and I decided to open up shop out in Southern California. So I've picked up and moved the family out to Southern California. And I've been out there since then. So since 2010, there's been several different iterations of the company. At the time, we were buying at auction. Then we sold that company off. Didn't make a whole lot of money, but then started direct to home seller acquisitions. So now I have a company called Seller's Advantage that we've had for about 11 years now out in Southern California. And we're pretty simple. We're just wholesalers. We keep our blinders on and run hard and fast and try and get as many deals as we can.
So what I love about you guys' business is that, often when I get applicants that I have a consult with, I hear this, man, I don't want to be in the room with a bunch of wholesalers. And I understand maybe in their markets they have, wholesalers that, don't operate with integrity and core values, and maybe, quite frankly, just maybe part-timers, what have you. But there's just this bad rep that wholesalers get. And I see you and what your partner Doug are doing in Phoenix and Southern California. I go, why would you not want to be in the room with guys like Damon and Doug? Now, personality-wise, that might be a different thing. I joke, I kid, but
it's fair. It's fair.
Why, we'll get deeper into the story behind, but you only wholesale. Like there's nothing else. You're just laser focused on wholesaling.
Laser focused on wholesaling. We've chased the shiny object a couple of different times, and we found out we weren't good in some areas, and we wondered why we caused ourselves such brain damage, and said, you know what, let's just get back to basics. Let's wholesale. So, 99.5% of what we do is assignments.
Here's why, I call these weekly conversations with a genius. And I think the most genius part of those that have the bigger businesses in this space is it doesn't mean they're not diversified. There's a lot of people in this community that are diversified with exit strategies, hold strategies, what have you. But the ones that it's simple, but it's genius in regards to that laser focus. I know that you guys have in your markets, and it's not it's not rocket science by any means, but generally the people that have the most success that I have seen over my time in this industry and being around the best and the brightest is just those that are laser super focused, are generally the ones that have a business operating at the highest level.
Yeah, I mean, that's our model. I was that, young entrepreneur that wanted to take over the world and do everything perfectly, and I found my limitations and found that, hey, if I stay focused, I can still have in my mind, a wildly successful job and work-life balance and be good at one thing.
Yeah, love it. You and Doug Hopkins, for those that, I don't know if you mentioned that earlier, but Doug Hopkins is your partner, well known obviously in Phoenix. We'll get into how you guys met. We'll do a little bit of a background here because I want to know deeper, because there's the fun part of having these weekly conversations is I get to know even more. And sometimes I don't know if I need to know it all, but I get to know more about members. And but I will say this. First of all, Doug is going to be upset because I had you on before I had him on. But I will say, in my defense, you responded and actually scheduled. Doug did not. So that's in my defense. That's number one. Number two, I can't think. Go ahead.
I was going to say typical.
Number two is there's a lot of great partnerships that I've seen, and there's, a lot of bad partnerships that I've seen over the years. I can't think of two operators. I'm sure there are others that are close, but you guys, from a partnership standpoint, are very equally aligned and as competitive against each other, but at the same time have that love for each other to want to do this together. And kudos to you guys, because I can't think of a better partnership than you and Doug.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Doug's absolutely got strengths that I don't have. I do things great that he doesn't do, and we've managed to pull this off now for 2007. Do the math for me. 18 years.
Yeah,
that we've been
on 20
charging at this, and it's been fun. It's been a great run.
So let's start at the beginning, but let's earmark what you just said. I talk to investors all the time that are 3 to 5 years into business, and they're like, what's next? I'm moving on to this next big shiny object, what have you. So I want to earmark that as we get down and later in the journey. But I want to go back to young Damon. Like, what did this journey of yours, you got here to this point, very successful real estate investor. What did young Damon want to be when he grew up? What is it that you said, I'm doing that when I get older?
I was going to be a dentist. I had a neighbor across the street from me growing up who was a dentist, and I saw he had every Friday off.
Yeah, well,
and they traveled a bunch.
Yeah.
And they traveled a bunch.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm going to be a dentist. My dad was in real estate. He owned a mortgage company, and he hustled. He had a great business, and kudos to him. He sold it right before the mortgage market collapsed. But I didn't want to follow in his footsteps. It's like, oh man, that's what my dad does. I'm Damon. I'm my own man. I'm going to go be a dentist.
Cavities.
Yeah.
I'm laughing because I can't see you in that, not laughing at dentistry. But I don't know. I know several dentists, and I don't even know if they knew they wanted to be a dentist or even dreamed of being a dentist. It just kind of worked out that way. When did you get to a point where you were like, all right, that's not for me?
So I was in my second year of community college. I was doing all the kind of pre-med stuff, about to transfer to Arizona State University. So I was doing that full time, doing about 15 credit hours a semester. And I also worked at my dad's mortgage company part-time. So I'd go to school early in the mornings and the evenings, and I was going to work. And that year, in my second year, timing played a big role in it, but I was able to make like $150,000 that year working part-time while going to school full-time. And I remember going home and...
What year is this?
This was in 2002? 2000,
Okay.
Yeah, 2001, 2002.
Not quite 100% mortgage time frame in like 2005, 6, and 7. Not quite there yet, but still very robust mortgage market at the time.
Yeah, there was a lot of refinancing. Rates were just dipping down. A lot of new construction here in Arizona.
Yeah.
So I was chasing that. I made good money, and I, was researching, and it said, on average, dentists made $150,000 a year. And I remember going home to my wife, and I'm like,
Yeah.
hey, should I keep going to school, or should I try doing this full time? And then we'll pay cash for school if I can have a good run at it.
Yeah.
So I left, and I jumped into mortgages full time, and just never looked back.
I had a similar story, but I did not make 150,000. In fact, I wanted to be a broadcaster. That's what I wanted to do, sports specifically. And so I thought I was cool. You just gave the story of going to school in the morning, and a lot of people would go and wait tables later on. In your particular case, you were selling mortgages. I was actually working at a television station while in college and doing all the grunt work, just no different than most people that start at any television station. But at least I was being paid, and I thought I was the man. I was making 25, probably a little bit less than that at the time, $1,000 a year. And I realized that, at the time that was good money, but here I am hearing you at 150. There's no way that I would consider working on someone's mouth if I'm working part-time, making 150,000. So when you went back, you talked about it, when did it say, all right, this is done. This is what I'm going to do?
I finished out the semester. So I finished my second year of school, and then it was time to sign up for new classes. And that was when it was the, go to the bathroom or get off the toilet. I'll say it, CG terms here for the show. And, to my wife's benefit, and which has been my benefit, is she's my number one cheerleader. She believes in me wholeheartedly and just said, man, if that's what you want to do, I have no question in this world that you're going to go kill it. Go do it. And she sat there cheering me on the whole way. So that's when I took the leap. Get to tell everybody I'm a community college dropout, and get to wear that badge proudly on my chest for the rest of my life.
Well, I think you've done okay for yourself, my friend. I wouldn't, I've talked to several people that, that are members, a couple different things here. Number one, I've talked to several members that, didn't graduate from college. I've talked to many that have. And knowing you over the years, I didn't know that, and there's no way I would have ever thought that you were a college dropout. I think you figured life out pretty well, my friend, and still continue to figure it out. But I will say this, the consistency that I see across the board, and I'm sure there will be some one-offs here and there, but almost everyone that I've talked to has a supportive spouse, and it was early on that spouse was supportive. Can you speak to that a little bit? Because I think people listening to this, picking the right partner for business is important. Obviously, you picked the right one there, and obviously you picked the right one at home as well. But most people don't think about that or think it's big of a factor. What has your wife meant to you in this journey?
Honestly, everything. I mean, there is zero drama on the home front. When I was young, I had to work hard. I was married to that phone. There's several times I walked out of dinner dates because my phone rang, and I'm a commission salesperson. I didn't have a choice. I had to get up. I had to walk out. And she, knew the rules and understood it, and it was never emotional or you didn't support me good enough. I couldn't imagine having to go through that with someone that's opposition. And I don't know how many people have to deal with that. I'm just, on my side, I'm just super blessed that never once I could call my wife today and say, hey, I got to take off out of here and fly to Florida today at 2:00. She'll be like, see ya.
Yeah. Yeah. That's important. Super important. And it gives, you the opportunity to continue to to do what you love. And honestly, if we're all doing what we love, we typically have happiness that comes along with that. So I didn't want to gloss over that, because I think that in all of our journeys, we have some secret sauce to success, and our spouses, for those of us that are married or have a significant other, our spouses are super important to that success. And I don't want to gloss over that, nor I think anybody that's listened to this that has some success and has a spouses knows that they win at home first before you win on the business battlefront. So, all right, let's talk now. You're in the mortgage business. You started with like 2002, 2003. Now we're creeping up into a time of change in 2008. Is that where you made this transition into real estate?
That's exactly when I made the change. So I dropped out of school and things went phenomenally well. Every single year, my income just kept getting higher and higher. I'm a kid in my late 20s, right before the mortgage meltdown, making $750,000 a year, which to me was, I was rich.
Yes.
I made some really good choices with that money, invested in some real estate, bought a big luxury home, or built a big luxury home that at the time cost $1.25 million. I put $500,000 down, so it's like I can never get affected. I'm good. And then the mortgage crisis hit, and I went into full panic. Like, holy cow! Everything I knew on how to generate income has disappeared. I had a bunch of loans in the pipeline that I kept having to bounce from lender to lender to lender, who said, "Yep, we can approve it." And later that afternoon, they canceled the program. And man, it was a miserable few months in my life where I had to look people in the eyes and tell them, I told you I could do this, and I can't do it. And that took a lot of reflection. And I had kind of said earlier, I made some good investments and I bought some real estate, and I bought this house, and I didn't just go spend the money on, frivolous things, but everything I invested in the Phoenix market got devastated. I shortly after that became upside down in my own primary residence that I'd put $500,000 down on. A rental property I was in was way upside down. And I had to start making choices on, man, the money's not coming in. I've got these payments due. How do I work through this? And, long story short, lost the house that we had built. I hung on to the rental property, just saying I can make that. The market will come back one day. The renters are helping with the payment. I can make that. But mentally, and this is a story I love to tell people. I walked into a bankruptcy attorney's office, and I was like, "Hey, I'm bankrupt." And he started saying, "Okay, let's go over your assets." And I had $100,000 in my bank account. And he started chuckling, and his response was, "You're not bankrupt." And I'm like, "Yes, I am. I got no money." And he points to the money in the account. But it just goes to show that I was mentally bankrupt. I'd been beat down so hard that I didn't know which way to go. And I was just walking in like a whipped puppy to say, I'm done. Well, his advice, he patted me on the back and he says, "Hey, when that 100 gets to zero, come see me and we can file for bankruptcy. But today you're not bankrupt." And thank goodness I never had to file for bankruptcy. I never went bankrupt. I was able to crawl out of that hole, and much of it was my partner, Doug Hopkins. He was already buying properties at foreclosure auction at the time. And if you know Doug, Doug's strong suit is not systems and processes. Doug's strong suit is relationships and ideas.
Yeah.
And so I saw what he was doing, and he was doing some great stuff. And I said, "Hey, I think, Doug, if we put some systems and processes to this, I think we can really up your volume and make this a much better company." And he was open to the idea. So we came in and kind of retooled his company, and he went from buying, 10 houses a month to 25 houses to 50 to 75 to 100 houses a month. At which point he said, all right, this works. You're in. And that's when we, and I say we, because at the time it was me and a couple other partners that had 50% of it, and Doug had the other 50%. But it was to help build these systems and processes, and we built a company called Posted Properties out here in Arizona, and really ratcheted that up to the point where we were buying 250 houses a month. And it was an auction bidding service. We would just charge everybody a flat fee, and we went and drove the properties, took all the pictures. We had a back office connection with Fidelity Title at the time. They did all the title research, and we were showing up at auction doing all the bidding. So we would tell people they could sit in their living room or whatever room in their underwear buying auction properties, because we handled everything else. And it was an awesome run.
A different time, and we'll fast forward here in a bit to when you came to Collective Genius, because I know that run wasn't forever, but I don't want to gloss over, where did the relationship come with Doug? Because you mentioned that you knew Doug, but you didn't say how the two of you met. Was it from the mortgage industry?
Yeah, so Doug actually worked for my dad for one day.
I'm not surprised.
In 1993, one of Doug's best friends was working for my dad. And if anybody remembers rates back from the early 90s, rates dropped to around 6%. And they'd been up in the 8s, 9s, even 10s for some people. So there was a massive refinance boom. So his best friend was working at my dad's mortgage company, Venture Financial, and his friend's getting $20,000 paychecks every 2 weeks. And Doug's doing door-to-door cable sales and making $2,000 a month. So his friend's like, look at my paycheck. So finally Doug's like, enough, I'm going over there. The day he started, mortgage rates spiked and the refinance boom was over. And so Doug was like, this sucks, I'm out of here. But his friend kept working for my dad for the next 10 years. And so Doug had then transitioned to a realtor, and Doug was always coming to the office. So even though he's, 6 years older than me, he was always coming to the office, and we always had made a friendship.
That makes total sense. It also makes sense why Doug is so good at the house and so good with relationships. I didn't know the door-to-door sales early on in his career before he was a realtor. That makes total sense. Well, what about you, though? I don't know, many people that made $750,000 a year as an employee, right? You were an employee of the company. Where did that, obviously it was a good time, but you were always on, you said. People don't just grow up that way. There's something that drives you to be at that. Now, see, the reason that we do this is I want people to get to know, our membership base. There's a lot to learn from it, and we call them conversations. But really, there's a common thread that I have found from most that drives them. What was it for you that early on that you were like, I'm going to be successful, even if it's being a dentist? But now that I've made all this money on this side, I'm going to be the best at this. Where does that come from for you?
I don't know exactly where it comes from. What I can tell you is I was really fortunate to have an unbelievable role model in my house, which was my dad. I was able to see him, and I could see that hard work paid off. Not only did he own a mortgage company, I grew up on a mini farm. And I call it a mini farm because it wasn't a farm that we made money off of. It's a farm that we just did all the work with no profit. So we had chickens and sheep and cows and horses.
Yeah.
And my dad worked us like borrowed mules.
Yeah.
So every Saturday, my friends are like, we're going to go ride our bikes. You want to come hang out? I'm like, maybe at 5 o'clock when I'm done with my chores. Like we just worked. And at the time, I despised it. I was just, man, my dad stinks. All he does is work me. And I was convinced he would go out into our pasture and break sticks and throw them up and try and make me just pick them up. Like, where are these sticks coming from? Why there's always sticks in the pasture?
Yep.
And then when I came to be my own man, it was just always, I could never sit still. My wife wanted to sit and cuddle and watch TV, and I could sit there for about 5 minutes before I went into the garage and reorganized. And I had to be doing something. And so I've just got that innate hardwiring from my youth that's sitting still is not happiness. And I don't think it's a benefit. When you started asking the question, I was like, I've kind of got a little bit of a mental disorder. And part of that is it's just never enough. My goalpost keeps moving.
Yep. That's the common thread that I see, is that collective genius members in general are people that want to continue to grow and scale. And once they get to that goal, they move on to the next one and the next one and the next one. I didn't know that about you. I did know that, that I didn't know the farm part. I knew that you had a great role model in your life. We actually had that a little bit in common. I didn't live in it on a daily basis, but every summer I look back and I go, man, my mom's summers must have been great, because every summer she would drive us from Kansas City to just outside of Chicago. And I tell people just outside of Chicago, well, most people don't know is just outside of Chicago is farmland. You're familiar with Chicago. You've done some there in the past. And as soon as you're outside of the city, it's farm quickly. And my grandfather worked on the railroad. And so from the day that school was over, from, basically second grade to probably eighth grade, somewhere in that range, my grandparents had basically a sustainable farm. Like everything that they grew, they canned, they ate, the chickens, the goats, we did the milk, the whole nine. And I just remember starting our days at 5 a.m., me and my two youngest brothers, every day about 5 a.m., and we might get to break every once in a while to eat or drink something. And I just remember the days would end with whatever you started your chores with. Generally, you were ending the day with a similar chore, and it was basically dark. And then you got up and rinsed and repeated. And I just absolutely, at the time, the first couple of weeks you loved because it was something different than the city. But after that, you're like, whoa, what are we doing here? We're just indentured servants here. And that's especially as you get older, you enjoyed spending time with your grandparents, but at the same time, you're like, hold on, we're free labor here. What are we, I need more. You need to take us to at least to a Bears game or to a Cubs game or something to reward us here. But I look back at that. Two things it taught me. Number one, hard work, obviously. It's something that that you don't even know, until you get older and really know where that came from. It came from that. And number two, we were eating organic way before it was a thing, because very rarely, I think once a month, my grandparents may have gone to the grocery store. Once a month, maybe. And so now I look back at that and go, my goodness, maybe that's where my early days of good health came from. I was eating and putting good fuel into my body. I didn't know that you could do that in Arizona. I knew you could do that in the Midwest. I didn't know you could have farms in Arizona.
Yeah, I don't realize how we did it to this day, honestly. It's like, how did we pull that off? But it was
farming.
Yeah, and to my dad's credit, it was a job for him. My summer mornings were waking up in the morning and going to the kitchen island to see the notes that my dad had written on my jobs for today.
Yes.
Every single night, he had to think out for all of his children, what are each of the jobs you have to do today? And he would take the time to write it out, and I couldn't even think about playing until those things were all done. And some days it's like, this is an all-day thing. This stinks. Other days was a few hours. But
I felt lazy if I had a chance to break. I was always looking at the watch going, okay, I only have 10 minutes here to eat this sandwich, and I got to get right back after it, because I didn't want to be up all night doing the things that were on my list to accomplish. And maybe that's why today I still work from a list every single day and work towards accomplishing everything on that list. All right, then let's get out the farm and let's go back to real estate. You make this transition to partner with Doug. You're the systems person. Obviously, You know, a lot of people listening to this are probably the visionary, and you need someone to help you with the systems, the processes, and putting the people in place to help you continue to grow and scale, if that's what you're looking to do. You obviously became that person, and over time you became, you probably already were a visionary, but obviously you were good at the things that Doug wasn't, and made for a good partnership. You're going from 25 to 50 to 100, 250 at one point. When things changed, though, that run changed. When did that run come to an end? And what did your mindset go to? Did it go back to, oh my gosh, this is another 2008. All of a sudden, we don't have inventory. Our business is going to slow down and going to shut down. Where did your mind go on that?
Yeah, ours was a little different. So I landed the account for Invitation Homes in Southern California. So we were their acquisition team at foreclosure auction. Not in every county, but in a couple of the counties. So we started buying just tons of houses for Invitation Homes. And really where it was winding down is they had another company that they were bidding through that they bought an interest into. They then wanted to take us out and put this new company in. So they actually did that. They said, hey guys, thanks for all your help. We're now switching over to this other company. And this other company, for a week and a half, fumbled the ball. They weren't getting their houses. They were missing bids. And I kept showing up at their office every day, even though they put us on the bench. I kept showing up saying, hey, did you miss this one? Why didn't you guys bid on this house? Oh, what'd you do here? They're like, what? That's not even on our list. A week and a half later, they came back and they're like, I don't care what you say, corporate. We are using posted properties because this is where we're getting the deals. So they pulled us back into it. But then that other company really wanted the revenue, and Invitation Homes really wanted the revenue through that company they bought. So that's who ended up buying us out. I always say it was an affiliate of Blackstone, because that other bidding company came and made Doug and I an offer that I say we couldn't refuse. It was not a significant amount of money that you can retire on. But we had an auction bidding service that we knew was a horse that we were running at full speed, and we weren't feeding water, or we weren't giving it water, and we weren't giving it hay, and that thing was going to fall over dead one day. And these people came and said, here's a lump sum of money for you to dismount that horse and let us run. And we're like, that sounds like a deal to me.
Strategic. It made sense at the time. Totally.
Yep. So we sold
what was coming.
Correct. So we sold posted properties in 2013. And if I'm honest, I was burnt out. Even though we owned the company, I was the borrowed mule to Invitation Homes. I was getting 4 hours of sleep a night. I was in their office at 6 a.m. till 10 p.m. I lived an hour away from their office out in Corona, where I'm out in Newport Beach. I was driving there every morning, driving home every night. When we sold it, I took about 4 months off that I just had to decompress. I didn't have Christmas. I didn't have the 4th of July. My family's taken off, and I'm going to have to run lists because those hedge funds, they don't care. They want their money. And if you want to be part of the system. So we took some time off, and that's where Doug and I just started retooling and said, man, we've got some money. We're a little comfortable. And Doug said, I want to run some TV commercials. I'm like, that's crazy, man. Oh, that's crazy. So he was the beta tester out in Arizona, and he ran some commercials, and sure enough, the leads started coming in.
What year was that?
2013. And then he said, hey, Damon, let's run them out in California too. And at this point, we started advertising under DougHopkins.com in Arizona and also in California because we hadn't proven out the direct-to-seller market. And really, at the time, at least in our markets, we didn't know of anybody doing it. And so he talked me into putting up $50,000 between the two of us. And that got us 3 months worth of TV commercials on the late night rotators on cable, right? Like the cheapest of the cheapest. And we had one employee named Damon Lines. We had one lead manager named Damon Lines, one acquisition manager named Damon Lines. And we were buying everything and flipping it. So it was me. I was answering the call. I was going to the appointments. I was overseeing construction. And I did that for, I think, 3 months. And we bought houses, and it absolutely paid for itself. And that's when we started bringing people into the business. And then we also rebranded in California under, from DougHopkins.com, we switched it over to sellersadvantage.com. Strategically, that I didn't want to build a business on somebody else's name. And heaven forbid, we hope none of this happens to any of us, but heaven forbid, Doug dropped dead and we just built a multimillion-dollar business with his name, and good luck selling it.
Right. It's not scalable, right? If you have it under one individual, I mean, you can scale it to an extent, but if something were to happen, obviously that would be very hard to continue. All right, so go back here. You started television in Phoenix and Los Angeles, or just Phoenix?
Phoenix got a month head start, and then California started a month later.
I thought for sure you guys were deeper in Phoenix before you did that in Los Angeles. So this is 2013. You got a couple months.
We sold the auction bidding service in both Arizona and California to this other company.
Okay.
All of our employees went with it. So now it was just Doug and I with, a couple hangarounds in Arizona. Doug was definitely more established in Arizona than I was in California. I'd only been in California for 3 years at that point.
So it takes a leap of faith. I spent 11 years in advertising, print, mostly directional mediums, where people seek out a service and they're calling you. And it's always been, especially back in the old days with Yellow Pages, when you needed a service, you called, opened the book and you called it. Now, obviously that's Google today. But television has always been more about branding and establishing your authority in the marketplace. And usually, at least from my advertising teachings, it was always, that's not going to make the phone ring. So I'm guessing that there was this, and I'm asking this because a lot of people that do marketing, we know what works today. But back then, not a lot of people were doing television. What made you guys go with television over direct mail like most people were doing back in 2013?
Money. We had a little bit of money. We felt willing to take some risks, and we wanted to fish in a pond that nobody else was fishing.
And you didn't do anything else. You just did television.
Nothing else.
You said, these people are over here doing a lot of direct mail in this very competitive marketplace. We're going to go television because no one else was doing television.
Nobody else was doing television in either of those markets at the time.
So when I came to Collective Genius, it was 2015. The organization that I joined, very similar to you, joined on an organization, was more of the integrator. And we're doing television 2014, and had been doing television before I joined that organization. And I just remember it being the number one lead source, and I was just flabbergasted. I was like, what? Television for buying or selling, you buying and them selling their homes? That's where the phone calls are coming from. And there were only, even in 2015, there were like 2 people in our group at the Collective Genius at the time that were doing television. So you guys really took a leap of faith here because you had never done the medium for anything in the past, had you?
Nothing. Nothing else. Yeah, that's how dumb we were. We just said, well, let's try it and see if it works, see if it doesn't. But nobody else is doing it. And frankly, everybody told us you can't do it and it's too expensive and the leads are too expensive and don't waste your time.
Yeah.
And we said, well, let's forge our own path, and shoot, it worked.
And so to take this one step forward, you're still doing television to this day.
Still our number one lead source. Yeah.
When I first joined the group, I remember saying, guys, you're missing the boat if you're not doing well. You're in a smaller market, and we didn't have anyone. We had Brad Chandler in DC that was doing television. He was with us screaming from the rooftops of it as a leaser, but everybody back then in 15 was like, you got to do more direct mail and do more direct mail. And we needed to do more direct mail, but not at the expense of our number one lead source, which was television. That's why one of the reasons you see you guys are, I'll say from the influence of most of these cities now that have investors on television, you guys, your organization was the one that really got everyone over the hump to say, all right, I want to do this because I know how well it's working for you guys in your two markets.
Right. And arguably two of the toughest markets across the country.
Absolutely.
It's just super competitive. Right.
LA is fragmented because of, it's so big and it's super competitive. But I just feel like Phoenix is one of those markets where there's so many real estate investors in a relatively smaller city, where Los Angeles is so big, but fragmented. Either way, they're both, super, super competitive markets. What is I'm sure it wasn't all great when you started. Those leads came in. What's the biggest lesson, as you restarted this with going direct to seller? Give me one of the biggest lessons that you learned.
I don't even know where to start, Leon. We were a train wreck. When we first started, we set up a Google Voice phone number, and Doug recorded a message. Hey, this is Doug Hopkins with DougHopkins.com. We are really interested in buying your house, whatever, right? Please leave a message. We live answered 0% of our calls.
No. Of the television.
That's the only thing we had.
Yeah.
Never, ever, ever did we answer the phone. We would get the voicemails and call people back. Probably just...
I mean, I'm sure you lost a lot, but you had enough people that you called back that were still interested in selling to you.
Yeah, we didn't know any better. When we had no overhead except for our marketing expense, we had no employees. I didn't need a monthly paycheck. Doug didn't need a monthly paycheck. We could afford to operate, like a troll, like we did, Unfortunately, if we went back and re-audited that, we probably left millions of dollars on the table.
Right.
But we were running at 1,000 miles an hour with, a team of one, and we made every mistake in the book and still made a profit because I didn't need to pull $20,000 a month out of the company. Doug didn't need to pull $20,000 a month out of the company. We just kept on stockpiling our profits and let it grow.
Right. Is there, what was the first wind where you guys were like, all right, we've got something here? Obviously, you've had success prior to, but for this particular business.
Really the first way we learned that we won is we went and got some really smart people in California, and we developed a board. And so quarterly, we'd meet with our board of directors, and here's these companies or people that are working at companies managing billions of dollars. One of them had $183 million exit out of the company. Like, these are smart guys. And they get our financials and they look over it, and their jaw hit the ground. Like, holy smokes. You guys are telling me your expenses are this and your profit is this?
Mm-hmm.
That's not a world-class organization. That's an out-of-this-world organization. Now, you won't be able to keep that with scale, but let's see if we can help you put a business together and maintain somewhat of a good profit margin, because our profit margins at the time were ridiculous, like 75%.
Right, because you had no overhead other than, like you said, just the expenses of marketing.
Right. And so that's when we realized, we left one of those board meetings, and Doug and I are like, man, we're just a couple stupid guys here, but we really know how to operate to make something, squeeze all the money out and make good money. Let's do that. Let's scale this thing up. Let's see where we can take it.
So two things there. The first is I commend you guys to for knowing that there are smarter people out there and formed a board. I am seeing that a lot more, and I'm excited that I'm seeing it from even younger investors that are seeking not just communities like ours, but are seeking local business owners in their markets to say, hey, would you be a part of my board? There's a young man in Georgia that does that. I was just blown away. I was like, really? Who taught you how to do that? He's like, I knew it was something that there were local business owners that I could network with that potentially would be private investors. But more importantly, I didn't need their money. I needed their knowledge. And I commend you guys to be able to do that, even, that far back. The second part of that is, you've got something rolling. I mean, absolutely rolling from a profit margin standpoint. And the two of you are built to continue to grow and scale, but you really hadn't run a team yet. You don't have employees. Where do you start?
We started with a lead manager. We started with someone to answer the calls, so at least we could now do some live answers. Let's see if we can catch more of these fish that are biting. And then we hired an acquisition manager. And really, our operations, we've always grown really slowly. Our business model is, let's have less employees that we pay them astronomically well, and they love the organization and they're all in. I don't want the corporate structure. I don't want the corporate culture. I'm stereotyping there, but I don't want that culture where my employees are looking for the next job because I treat them like garbage. So we very slowly and methodically grew with the right people, with the right mindset. And scaled this up to a company in just a matter of a few years, making, netting millions and I think $3 or $4 million in profit. As we scaled meaning we had 5 employees, right? Like we didn't need a lot.
To this day, how many do you have?
In California, I've got 19. In Arizona, it's 24.
So 24, from 5 to 24. I know that wasn't overnight. I think it's super important. There's so much good in what you just said. People think that you have to go out and hire, 3, 4, 5 different people immediately to really ramp things up and scale things up. I would much rather, and I think you could attest to this, I've seen this in this industry where there are certain people, I get it, you got to hire to get to a certain point in your business if you don't have a model like with 2 partners like you guys were running. But over time, a ton of employees that are average will never outperform a few that are exceptional. Will never. It won't happen. And there's so much good in saying that. Like people are like, I can't afford someone. You can't afford not to hire smart people. I've talked about this with several members on the podcast that they have cognitive scores that if they have a minimum standard. If someone doesn't hit a certain number, they're not employable with their organization in any role. And I would encourage all, when thinking of hiring positions, you don't necessarily need a ton. You just need a good number, especially as you start to scale. Hire smart people, pay them well, take care of them, and your company will continue to grow from 5 to 19, and you'll be able to continue to afford all of those people because it's beyond just a paycheck. It's an emotional paycheck. It's culture. And everyone's winning, and you don't have a bunch of people on the team that are dragging people down. That's the biggest thing I see with real estate investors trying to scale their businesses. They've got maybe 2 people that can play, but the rest of the people are bringing the team down. I'm sure there's been some time. It's not perfect by any means, I'm sure, on your hiring process, nor is it for anybody. But I'm sure over time you were able to develop and continue to hire good people while still getting rid of those that just didn't make the cut, I'm guessing.
Absolutely. And we've made mistakes in hiring, and we've had to escort those people out of the business, right? But I also don't get, like, we do run PIs on our people and we run COG scores on our people. But Doug and I also do a gut check. I just hired someone as an acquisition manager that you are not supposed to hire. And he went out his first month and he's the number one guy in the company, bringing in almost $1 million of assignment fees in his first month. And PI says, absolutely not. He's going to align with the seller. He'll never get a deal. Don't hire him. I said, I don't care because I hear what this guy's saying. He chased me down for 6 months trying to get a job. He wouldn't let me go until I said yes. And I'm like, if this guy does that with the sellers, we're going to win.
Yeah.
So PI scores are great.
Yeah.
But you also got to know the person. They can't tell you everything.
Have a process, filter them through, have some standards, but also, especially with you guys' experience, from a sales perspective, especially what you're looking for. But the process that you have in place keeps you from just doing what you said before. Can't just go with your gut. You've got to have gut plus data.
Right.
It helps tremendously. Even if it's a free resource, you don't have to use PI. You don't have to use COG scores and all of these things. You just need to have a process and get some information for the individual. But when you're a successful salesperson like you guys have and successful business owners, I do think you have to have a part of your gut in this process, as long as they meet certain criteria that you have minimum standards for.
Right.
So I met you in 2018. I remember at the time that you guys had a very, very successful business, as you do today. But there was this fear that the people in the markets of Phoenix and Southern California maybe knew some things that you guys didn't. What was that? What was it that made you reach out? Because prior to joining the Collective Genius, you guys had never been in a mastermind. I know Doug, who hates to present, I know there was no way that he was in a mastermind. What made you guys, make that decision to say, all right, now I've had board of directors, now I need another board of directors that are investors?
What it really came down to is we were getting older. And, there's some gray here. I shaved it, but I'm closer to 50 than I am 40 at this point. And we always know, the next generation's coming. And someday they're going to get us and they're going to pass us. And really it was this fear that Doug had, I'll give him the credit, of saying, I don't want to get long in the tooth. I don't want to get stuck in my ways while the world passes us by. And he actually had to bully me quite a bit to get me into a mastermind because, we're doing all right and we're making good money and life was good. But at the same time, he said, dude, we don't know what we don't know. Let's go to the Collective Genius. We're looking at a couple different ones and we chose Collective Genius and that first meeting was eye-opening on several of our processes. I remember being not one of my finer moments, but very defensive because I knew we had a good company and I knew we made profit. And as I did my hot seat back then, there's a bunch of people in the room that were like, well, what are you doing this? It's like, oh, you need to fix that. I'm like, no, it's working fine. You need to fix this. You got to get back with these people in 5 minutes. Like, oh, everything's good. We get out of there. Doug's like, whoo, you sure took that personally, didn't you? And I had to rethink through that and be like, yeah, you're right. We came here to learn, not that I know it all and look at me, I've made decent money, because we learned a lot. We ate a lot of humble pie on just simple processes.
Sure.
Right? Simple things that we could tweak that just made us so much better.
That piece of it is so important. I think that Collective Genius works because people that we bring in are vetted and are valuable to the room. The value that you receive is when you check that ego and you say, you know what, no matter how much success I've had, I can learn from everybody in this room. Phil Green and I actually had this conversation a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, wait, you had Phil on before me?
No, actually, this was at a meeting.
Okay, then we can keep going. Go ahead.
Check that. No, it's actually at a meeting, and it was at a Select. As you know, Phil has a service-based business, and so he was at the Select room, and he was like, he had 3 pages of notes, and this is one of the, a CEO member like yourself, and he's got 3 pages of notes from our Select meeting. He just always open to learning and listening. That's the most important part, right? Listening to others' opinions of how they're doing something. It doesn't mean that you will use it or for your business, but there's always nuggets available there. I remember you guys' first meeting, and back then when we did hot seats, it was, there was always someone questioning, because I love that piece of it, because it made you better, made you question everything that you're doing. Not to say that you were going to scrap everything, but it made you maybe tweak something that made a big difference. Do you remember the biggest, over the years, is there one thing that stands out that, because for me, it was be more consistent with direct mount out of the gates, and it took us from 50 something to 70, 80 some odd deals on an annual basis just overnight. Well, was there one for you that you're like, this made a massive, massive difference for us long term?
The biggest one that I mentioned already was response time. Getting back to everybody. Somebody presented a chart of, and I'm going to butcher it, right? But it's like, if you get back with people within 5 minutes, you have a 770% higher chance of interacting with that person than if you get back to them even an hour later. It just drops off this cliff. So that was our number one. There's hey, we need to fix this. The one that I still mock Doug about is, we showed up, we never knew what a VA was. And we're in this room, and all these people are like, oh, at the VAs. Oh, yeah, I'm paying $5 an hour. I'm paying this. Everybody we had was our own employees. And we walked out of that meeting. He's like, I think we got to fire everybody and hire VAs to do our lead management.
Sounds like Doug.
I was like, no, Doug. We're not doing that. No, we're not. He's like, oh, we're wasting all this money, and they're having success. I'm like, let's pick 3 things. That's not one of them. What else are we going to do? So there's also what could be interpreted as bad ideas that come out of these. And so that was the other thing that we learned is I'm sure Phil made 3 pages of notes. I'm sure Phil is not trying to implement 3 pages of notes tomorrow.
No.
Right? And that was one of the biggest takeaways for us is, if we're honest, the first time we left and we had 10 things we wanted to implement, by the next quarter when we show up, we'd done none of them properly, and really had to say, okay, stop. I'm going to pick one that I think is important. Doug, you pick one that you think is important. And for the next quarter, we're going to do really well at those. And it was eating the elephant one bite at a time technique, as opposed to trying to swallow it whole.
It's so interesting, because I can't tell you how many times I say that per meeting of, pick one thing that will take the least amount of effort, the least amount of time, potentially even the least amount of money, but will make you the most money. And usually people still leave and try to implement 0 to 1, 4 different things by the next quarter. But it takes, it takes that you have, because these are entrepreneurs like yourself, you're hard-charging entrepreneurs that have had success. I can do this. And I can see Doug being very quick start of going, we're going to do this and we're going to do all these other things as well immediately. But I do know this, upon coming in, you guys added a ton of value, but I also saw that change, that you guys are like, there are some people doing some really great things in this room. We'll take some, we'll give some. It was always reciprocal to you and to others. You guys have always been 2 of the best givers, especially at the tables when we do, vulnerability exercises and connections and things of that nature. So I know you have gotten a ton from it, but I also know that you have given a ton as well. One thing I don't want to gloss over, because I do want to say this before we get into the wrap up here. When I first met you guys, you were in more than just the 2 markets. You guys actually did something that I've seen people do successfully over the years, but you actually shut down 2 markets, if I remember correctly. You shut down 2. You grew into 2, and then you shut down 2. That's a big decision, and you didn't make that because you were in CG, but you made that decision where a lot of people will just continue to dump money. How did you come to that conclusion that you needed to cut these other two markets?
Well, I think part of it came to our board. The other part was I was gone 2 weeks out of the year. 1 week I was spending in Chicago, or a year, month. 1 week in Chicago, 1 week in Philly, checking in on those markets, helping to get them up and running. And at the time, our model, like I've heard so many people in CG, they think they're tapped out in their own backyard.
This is what I was getting at. This is what I wanted to hear from you.
We're in Southern California with 20 million people.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, we were doing 10 to 20 deals a month, which was very profitable. But man, how many more deals? There's probably not that many more deals out there.
That's right.
We got to take this show on the road. Where else has old housing inventory, Philly, Chicago, and a big major metro that we can get another 10 to 20 out of each of these markets every month? So we went out there, and then we found that we were working harder, but you get what you focus on. When I left California, I'd go to Chicago, I'd go to Philly, and we find California starts, instead of thriving, it starts being mediocre. The profits dip off. The employees aren't working as hard. And it was hard for me because really this was part of my baby. It was like, I'm the systems and processes guy. I'm going to go take this. And Doug was a lot more reluctant, but he said, go get it, until we finally, threw in that towel that, man, this isn't worth it. We got 20 million people in Southern California. I think we can buy more than 10 deals a month, 20 deals a month. Let's get better. Let's go deeper. And that's probably the best business decision that we've made. Even today, where we have a much bigger market share than that, we're nothing. There's 20 million people out here.
Right.
Like, we still have, I had that question today from that newer acquisitions guy. Oh, what's your market share in Southern California? It's got to be massive. I don't know the number, but I'd guess somewhere between 1% and 5%.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe.
Yeah. That's what I was getting at. And I led the horse to water and you lapped it up. That's your give, man. That, if I could just bottle that and continue to spread that gospel, no matter what level you're at listening to this, you can always go deeper. I don't know too many people that have market penetration at such a high level that they can't do more deals. There's probably only a couple of them that come to mind, and even them, they can do more. Like Eric Brewer's a perfect example in the York Metro in Pennsylvania. That's a small market, relatively speaking. He can get into Baltimore and some other areas. But when you're talking Los Angeles and Phoenix, you're talking the second largest city in the United States and the sixth largest last I checked. I mean, these are two top 10 markets, almost top 5 markets. And, even if you're not in a top 5, top 6 market, there's still a lot more deals to be done. I appreciate you giving that information, because to me, that's a lesson that I hear all the time, especially for virtual wholesale. Virtual wholesaling has made it easier, but, and I'm not trying to tell people not to do multiple markets, but man, when you laser focus, you end up doing a ton more deals in your backyard, more than you ever thought you could do, because of your own limiting beliefs. I don't care if it's a market, it's a million MSA. All right.
Yeah.
So outside of being always positive, one of the funniest guys in the group, what's your superpower?
I don't know. I think it's a double-edged sword that we talked about earlier, that unfortunately it's never enough. That moving goalpost. I wake up every morning thinking I'm broke and I don't know where my next paycheck's coming from. And it's not true, but it's true to me.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't scare me. It drives me. I'm very driven. You alluded to it earlier in the conversation that, Doug and I have a competition. I run Southern California. He knows nothing about it. I mean, I shouldn't say nothing about it. That's an overstatement. He has no part of the daily operations in Southern California. I have no part of the operations in Arizona. We're working towards the same goal, but in the famous words of Mike Tyson, I want to eat his children. I got to beat him every month. So we've got this internal battle that we're on the same team, but each of our teams are just, come on, we can't let Phoenix win this
And
one.
you have done so well on partners, your spouse, your business partner. You've done so well because you've got one that's super supportive. Actually, both are super supportive, and then your business partner is one that pushes you, and you guys have fun with it. I often get text messages from your partner telling me how much he's kicking your ass. So I love being a part of it as well, because I get to be a part of that back and forth, and it's always, Phoenix may have done more deals, but check the revenue is the response I typically get from you.
Yeah. Did you do $25 million of assignment fees last year, Doug, or was that me? Which I don't know.
Love that.
We'll check.
There's a lot of good there, man. If you can find someone that can be your road dog like Doug Hopkins, man, it's a great partner to have. What about you gave me your superpower there, which is a very common superpower that I see in highly driven entrepreneurs, and there's no doubt, no reason that anyone should doubt why you're at the highest level within the collective genius for that reason. But give me something maybe I don't even know about you.
Gosh, what do you not know about me? I'm a grandpa. That's not a superpower, but
no, just something that someone doesn't know about you. You're a pretty young grandpa, man.
Yeah, I had my first kid at 23 years old, and then my 23-year-old son had my first grandchild. So I'm 40. I would turn into a grandpa at 46, and man, love every minute of it.
Yeah,
hadn't been without a couple bumps. There's a lot of medical issues with the granddaughter, but miracles happening every day, and great medical professionals taking care of her.
Yeah, very cool. Are you a big reader? I don't think we've ever talked about this.
You kind of give me a note saying, hey, let's talk about books. And I was like, ooh, he's not going to like my answer here. Here's my answer. I do like to read. However, I believe the most important part of reading is learning and implementing. So I do not consume a lot of books. I'll usually read a book a year, and read, I use that loosely. Sometimes it's an audiobook. And then I will be hyper-focused on implementing all of the strategies I learned from that book. For example, we talked about never split the difference. I did a presentation on that.
Right.
That's our sales Bible to this day. We don't read any other sales books. Let's go master this one before we confuse our whole team to introduce 20 different angles hitting them in the face and they don't know what to do with it. So I hyper-focus on books one at a time, and then it's about implementation, because I can hear all the good ideas I want, but if they go out my other ear and I never do anything about it, it didn't help me or my business.
My favorite answers when it comes to book suggestions is that type of answer. The people, like, what's a book that you've reread outside of Never Split the Difference? I'm sure there are multiple books that you've reread to continue to implement. Is there another one like that you can think of?
American Icon. How Alan Mulally saved the Ford Motor Company. All my business meetings are modeled off of that. The green, yellow, the reds, the way we meet, the way we hold our meetings and our goal-setting meeting. Like, I patterned my business off of that book, and I've read that thing 10 times.
I've talked about this on podcasts in the past that, I know there are some people that can read and absorb a ton of books a year. I'm not that person. And I love new ideas. I think that reading is important from an educational standpoint, because if you're not filling it with good new ideas and information, then more than likely you're filling it with something else and potentially dark. So let's fill it with the light. But I do believe that if you're listening to this and you're someone that says, man, I just people, give me all these book suggestions. It's okay to absorb a book and actually that you love, and utilize those ideas that are in that book within the framework of your business. I mean, you just gave two there with Never Split the Difference, that it's your sales Bible to this day, and your framework of your meetings is based on American Icon. I mean, those are two books that you could speak to, that you use within your business. I can tell you right now, I could talk to somebody that's read 20 books last year and they won't use any of that framework in their business. Or if they are, it may be just something very small from one of the books, not the other 19.
Right. Yeah. And so that's my outlook. I'm not saying I'm right or it's the only way to do it. It's the way that my brain works. If I'm going to read it, if I'm going to learn something, I'm going to apply it.
Love it. That's that junior college dropout mentality. I love it.
Yeah, maybe.
Had to bring that back. I think you've done pretty well with your education, because you got more education in this field than you ever would have at a 4-year university and beyond. You got more than an MBA, my friend. You got a doctorate in real estate and sales. If people want to get a hold of you, Damon, obviously you are a busy man, but if people want to reach out to you, how do they find you?
I'm hard to find. I mean, it's you all attest to this. Doug Hopkins is a big person and personality. He's been the one on all of our commercials. Yeah. They just barely started putting me on the commercials and billboards and stuff, and they did that with me kicking and screaming. I like staying out of the limelight. I like being the guy in the shadows and still cashing the checks. So I don't use social media. You can email me. Yeah.
Good on.
So
I've got a suggestion.
Yeah.
If they want to have a conversation with you, then they should reach out to us so they can get in the same room. That's the best spot, because if you are in the collective genius at our CEO or premier level, is when Damon is there. I can tell you from many, many years now of seeing him interact with a new member all the way up to someone that's been with us 14 years. It's the best way to reach Damon. And dude, good on you for not participating in social media. It speaks again a lot to why you have success and why you're such a good partner for Doug. Because Doug is, not to say that he's a big social media guy, but he is definitely somebody that is always, like you said before, he's a relationship guy. He loves doing the acquisitions piece, and that'll never change.
Yep. No, and he is the brand, right? His company out here in Arizona is DougHopkins.com. He was the face of all these commercials. So he's got to have a presence out there. And I've really enjoyed not having an online presence.
Yeah.
And people make fun of me for it, but I'm going to keep that up as long as I can. But yeah, I like your suggestion of reach out to you, get in the room, and we could talk.
Well, let's do that.
That's one of the humbling things for Doug and I. We believe we're the new guys just starting out. So when people have heard of us and they come up to us and I'm going to over-exaggerate, right? They're shaking like, oh my gosh, I got to talk to Doug Hopkins, or I got to talk to, Damon and Doug. This is crazy.
Right.
It's embarrassing to us because it's like, no, you don't know. We're just a couple of goofballs, man.
We know that. I know.
Yeah, you know that. I think the people that know us know it well, but it's, we're just ordinary guys that are driven and enjoy everybody's company.
Well, I appreciate your time. I know you're busy. You got to get back to your social media that I know you're going to go do. And by the way, will you walk down the hallway and tell Doug to return my email or my text message? I know he won't return the email. Return my text message so we can get him on the show as well. And as I mentioned before, if you want to be in the room with guys like Damon, whether that's CEO level, premier level, select level, or Elevate, you can find all that information on our website, collectivegenius.com. There's an application there. Schedule a time to talk to us. We'll see if you're the right fit for the room and vice versa if we're the right fit for you. If you obviously love this conversation, we'd love for you to like and subscribe and do all those things that you do on the socials and the podcast and all those things that Damon and I are trying to do more of, but are of the older generation and getting closer again to 50 than we are 40. So appreciate all the support, and tell a friend. Obviously, if you like the podcast, we appreciate that support. And Damon, I appreciate your time today, and always look forward to these conversations. Learned a lot. So thank you for your time today, my friend. We will see the rest of you next week.
Are you ready to scale your real estate business? Visit thecollectivegenius.com, where real estate investors come to scale. Subscribe to the Collective Genius podcast and hit the bell icon to be notified when our next episode releases. And thanks for listening.